Greetings, miss, and good morning, good evening, or whatever you're watching this video. My name is Yen, and together with my teammates Yiki, Nashya, and of course Nick, we're going to be presenting about our intercultural film review. And the film that we've chosen is Crazy Rich Asians, which is a very prominent Asian film. And from there, we're here to discuss about its intercultural aspects. So Nick will be starting us off with the introduction of the film.
Okay, so Crazy Rich Asians is a 2018 romantic comedy drama film directed by John Chu, and it was based on the novel itself, which was released in 2013. So it is being hailed as a charming modern-day Cinderella tale, a romantic comedy that brings a whole new meaning of extravagance and glamour to the big screen. The plot follows Rachel Chu, an American-born Chinese economics professor who goes to Singapore with her boyfriend to attend her boyfriend is Nick Young to attend his best friend's wedding in Singapore. So Rachel must then face Nick's Singaporean mom, which is a strict and disapproving mother. So the movie depicts the challenges of cultural identification in an Asian society. So the movie is trying to represent a worldwide problem, which is being self-conflicted between two cultures, which is a sensitive topic that Asian Americans can relate to. Whether you are too Chinese to be in an American society or you are too American to be in an Asian society. So it is hard to please both sides as seen in the movie. This struggle goes hand in hand with the conflict between tradition and modernity. So Nick's mother, Eleanor Young, personifies all that is tradition and custom, while Rachel is the image of the new and modern. So yeah, next slide, please.
So the movie starts with Rachel, a Chinese American New Yorker, traveling to Singapore with her boyfriend, Nick Young. They go there to attend his best friend's wedding. When she gets there, she finds out that he's actually from one of the most wealthy and prominent families in Asia. She evidently does not fit in with the upper class, and she quickly becomes a target for the women who are trying to get Nick's attention, as well as his mother, Eleanor. Eleanor does not believe that Rachel is good enough for her son and is determined to break them up. By the end of the movie, Rachel manages to gain Eleanor's approval and eventually gets engaged to Nick. Next slide.
So the first argument of the movie is the sense of ethnocentrism. The simple definition of ethnocentrism is believing that one's group is superior over the other. And in the movie, Eleanor does not approve of Nick's relationship with Rachel because Rachel is an Asian American. And throughout the movie, she keeps on belittling her for being too American and for someone who has forgotten about her roots. So she stereotypes Americans for being unable to build things that last, which is in this case, she was referring to a family. This shows that familial love is significant in this movie, and Eleanor puts her family above all else. And she thinks that Rachel cannot do the same because she lived in America for far too long. And she also assumes that Rachel doesn't know any family traditions or cultural practices. So yeah.
Secondly, the second argument is the stereotyping of the conventional yellow face of Asians. This stereotype depicts the lifestyle of Asian people are extremely exaggerated in terms of the spectacles of luxury, excess, depravity, and evil in terms of their lifestyle. Therefore, one example in the film can be when Rachel Chu visits her friend Piglin's house for the very first time, and Piglin's mother proudly shows her around the family home decorated with gold statues and ornaments. She also added that the main inspiration for the home was the Hall of Mirrors in the Palace of Versailles and Donald Trump's bathroom, apparently. This shows that the film recirculates the entire stereotype by depicting the lifestyle of Asians in this way. Next, please.
The next argument is going to be about the portrayal of Chinese ethnicity individuals with different worldviews and, of course, perspectives. Everyone will have this typical stereotype that all Chinese belongs to, well, China, to a point that that's accurate, but actually for people who are Chinese and growing up in different cultures, it affects their way of thinking and their worldviews quite a bit. So from there, different values come from external environment influence. Like our main character, Rachel, even though she's a Chinese, she's actually brought up in America and therefore adopting American culture. And compared to Nick, who's been adopting Singaporean Chinese culture for his pretty much his entire life. And when it comes to appreciating each other's worldviews and perspectives, that is when Chinese gatherings, mass gatherings happen. And that's when intercultural communication happens. Because for each of us, even though we're under the roof of the race of Chinese or having Chinese ethnicity, we actually have much to talk about because of our differing cultures. Each of us makes us different. Our cultures create our perspectives and worldviews, therefore allowing us to actually engage in intercultural communication during mass gatherings.
So social status refers to the standing that a person holds in society based on prestige. There are 3 different social statuses that are portrayed in the movie, which are the upper class, middle class, and working class. Rachel comes from a middle class background while Nick comes from the upper class. There is an evident divide between the 2 classes, with Nick's family, his mother especially, not accepting Rachel as they don't believe that she's good enough for him. This occurs despite Rachel coming into the family, trying her best to make a good impression on them. She's rejected purely because she doesn't come from the right family. This causes tension between Rachel and various different characters throughout the film.
And the last argument is going to be cultural changes with time. And in the movie, Nick's grandmother is very strict about passing down old culture ways to the new generation, doing soup dumplings. And from there, if I have nothing against the traditions of trying to pass down something from an older generation, but if you're doing it in a way where it's forceful and it's not what let's say your grandchildren wants, is not exactly the perfect way of trying to preserve a culture. The way to actually preserve a culture is by creating an adaptive culture and adapting one that can last through many, many generations in time. And from there, how can we achieve this? We can achieve this by having the older generation and the younger generation to actually engage in intercultural communication, to talk about ideas, to talk about improvements on how to create this kind of adapting culture so that it can last, not something to be forced onto anyone, because cultures can be beautiful, but being forced onto anyone, someone can see culture as something that's very disgusting and overall not very pretty. Yeah. So in this case, everyone should be able to come together and create an adapting culture that will be long lasting in the long run.
So the next part is the critical and thoughtful insights into intercultural communication theories and their application in the movies. For instance, there are 2 over here, which is the first one, anxiety uncertainty management theory. This refers to how people can effectively communicate with one another in different social settings by managing their sensations of fear and uncertainty. Followed by the impression management theory, which addresses the techniques that people would employ in an attempt to influence how others perceive them. Next, please. So for anxiety uncertainty management theory, we can use the scene where Rachel visits the Nick family's house for the very first time. So first off, Rachel can be seen glancing around the environment nervously. At even one point, it demonstrated her uneasiness when she mistakenly thought a sanitizing product was a bowl of soup. Followed by when she accidentally spilled red wine on Nick's shirt, which can clearly demonstrate how uncomfortable she is throughout the entire time. However, when she was introduced to Oliver, which is a distant relative of Nick, she instantly feels comfortable around him, as he also shares to her that he is a poorer relation from the family, hence he was also being looked down upon. After this, Rachel can be seen being way more comfortable and confident when she approaches more of Nick's relatives. Even though they made snarky comments about her appearance or even judge her for who she is, she still managed to take it well. This shows that she was able to balance her anxiety and manage it well in the end. This can be seen when she successfully showed herself and presented herself in front of Nick's grandmother in the end. Next, please. Now, for the impression management theory, it can be applied to the scene where Nick mentions about his cousin Eddie in Hong Kong as a finance supervisor. Now, for this scene, right, Eddie can be seen with his wife posing for a Hong Kong Vogue photo shoot. You can see that he's trying his best to depict a very wholesome family. However, after the shoot, he and his wife Fiona left the scene very abruptly, which he made comments about her, saying that if you have chosen a better looking gown, we would be featured in the American Vogue instead. To which Fiona replied with, "You can take the gown and go to hell, Eddie," which clearly depicts her frustration. Next.
Lastly, to wrap up the entire thing, throughout Crazy Rich Asians, there's been many aspects where intercultural communication has been brought up in the sense where Rachel, our main character, is trying to utilize intercultural communication to actually communicate with her boyfriend's family, aka Nick Young's family, where they are more cultural and old-fashioned. So from there, this entire film can also be summarized with three very important points. Number one, stop allowing the judgment of others to hinder your pursuit of happiness. As everyone knows, their individual happiness is, of course, utmost important. So from there, you carry your happiness wherever you go and stop allowing the judgment of others destroy that happiness. Number two, stand up for yourself in times of adversary, as Nick as well trying to understand his girlfriend, and also Rachel trying to understand Nick himself. So both of them are trying to understand each other from a family perspectives. And there's been very many adversaries, as mentioned earlier, with the social status, with being nervous, trying to present herself. So in times of adversary, you need to know how to stand up for yourself. And finally, courage is the key to finding love in any relationship. Nick and of course Rachel managed to find their love by of course communicating and understanding one another, and of course appreciating each other's presence in the form of a family orientation, and of course Nick's mother appreciating her to have this kind of relationship in order to be allowing her to actually be engaged with her son. So from there, everyone must have courage to of course preserve a right relationship. Without further ado, that wraps up our entire presentation. Thank you so much for your time and attention, Miss.